Testing, testing. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. My name is Linda Duke. I'm the director here at the Beach Museum of Art, and I'm so happy to see you all here tonight. We are gathered to enjoy a presentation from artist Stan Hurd, and the museum is extremely proud to be able to offer this program. As many of you know, Stan is a longtime Kansas resident. He's lived in Kansas most of his life, but he works nationally and internationally on earth creations, earth works that are probably the best known, but he's also a painter and a filmmaker and really a multifaceted artist. So when we approached Stan about doing a project here in the museum's Stolzer Family Foundation gallery, we didn't know what he'd come up with. Would we need to look at it from above or what? But he had an idea that had been building in his mind, and it was a really exciting one for us. And he was extremely willing to work with students on his project. I'm so impressed by the wonderful way he allowed students to participate fully in the creative process. And so if any of you haven't had a chance yet to see Cairns on the Beach in the Stolzer Family Foundation Gallery, I hope you'll take an opportunity after the talk tonight and also join us for the reception afterwards and a chance to chat more informally with Stan. So now please join me in welcoming Stan Hurd.
So my first comic book. Did you know, Steph, they made a comic book. And the crazy thing is, I look better as a comic figure than real life. I mean, look at it. I'm kind of handsome in there. Oh, I'm spilling my water. So I wanted to introduce my niece, Stephanie Morris, and her daughter, Maddie. Stephanie has her practice here, psychology practice across town as of a year today. Yeah, so she was at K-State for quite a while, and you traveled around the country. And Maddie is her daughter, who's, 21 now? So I wore my coat because my mother, who passed a year and a half ago, would have appreciated it. But I'm taking it off now because it's too hot. But I did appear with it, Jay, remind people.
Put it right here, I'll
Thank you,
keep
sir.
your wallet
Keep
safe.
your hands out of that, too. So yes, this has been quite a little trek. How much time do we have? 4 hours? No. Half an hour? The students are going, please, no. I'm just going to kind of jump into this, and I have a little video afterwards that we may get to, but I do have two of the students that worked with me, Nick and Hannah. Has any others show up yet? Cornelius will drag in here in a bit, I'm sure. And you can hear me all right? So here we go, kiddos. So for those of you who have seen my slideshow, I apologize that you're going to have to sit through the first of this a little bit. This is, how do I get that big? Thanks, Sam. So this is me, second from the left, growing up on a small farm town in southwest Kansas with my mom dressed us all up beautifully to go to Easter Sunday and dreamed that we might go off to become doctors and lawyers and such at wonderful places like Kansas State. And I came back looking like this from college. And I want to tell you, I could play that guitar, kind of, but I did look good, didn't I? I'm going to jump right into what I'm doing. I change this up every time because I really get bored with slideshows and hearing my story over and over again. So I'm jumping into what I'm doing right now and what I'll leave tomorrow to finish, and that's a 1 acre piece on Thomson Reuters property in Minneapolis, Minnesota, off the end of the runway at the big airport there, for the Minneapolis Institute of Art, which is now called MIA instead of MIA, which is really, I kind of got to be a part of the branding of a major museum in some way. So they did want the logo on. We fought a little bit about the size of the logo on Van Gogh's artwork. But this is Vincent van Gogh's Olive Trees, and it's a beautiful painting in their collection. They just received Van Gogh's Iris, one of his most famous paintings beyond Starry Night, probably. And so I've been able to spend some time with MIA, and then I have one more week, September 11th, we dedicate this piece, hopefully with it not raining and with a helicopter coverage and everything. And I've got a lot of work to do in the next week, anybody that wants to come along. So I'm going to jump also now into what the inspiration was for my visit to the beach, which has been a pretty incredible experience for me. This is the second museum I've worked with, but I did something with the Neerman Museum in Johnson County, which is a great space. But the beach in Kansas State is, big in my heart. Two of my brothers graduated from Kansas State, and a lot of the family have spent a lot of time up here, and I'm big K-State. I bleed purple. Unless they play the Jayhawks in basketball. Although I kind of like it when they beat them every once in a while. So a few years ago, I was out with a friend and working on a woodworks project. Come on in, folks. And working on a woodworks project, and he got comfortable enough with me that he said, do you have time at lunch hour to come up and see something that will surprise you? Because he knew I was an earthworks artist. So we went up and walked back through the grounds around Perry Lake, and he didn't tell me what I was looking for. And we came around the corner, and there's this cairn that, pretty obvious to me, was not something created in the last 100 years. I mean, it just had a feeling. I got goosebumps when I saw it. It was like, oh my God, is that what I think it is? And he said, he says, nobody that I've talked to really knows the origin of it, but he said it's been here a long time, and actually there were 3 of them when they built Perry Lake, and 2 of them were so exposed that within a fairly short time people tore it down and messed with it and tried to dig it up and find out if there was something buried. So this is the last one, and it was kind of a special thing for him to let me see this, to invite me, to trust me that my seeing it wouldn't, cause it harm. And now I've created an image that everybody in the world's going to know. Anyway, so we really didn't get to go out there. We talked about it, but I don't think we needed to. The students saw it, and so with that in mind, I sat with the students here and with Linda and Lindsay and the group. And we just started hashing out ideas. And I said, I would kind of like to just build a cairn, my own cairn. And I would like the students to be involved in that process. And then we have a whole space out here. I would like the students to choose different areas. And Nick and Hannah and Beth and Diane and Trey and Cornelius, who am I missing? Just a lot of different people, even museum folks got involved. And we had so many conversations and Chautauquas and gatherings, and Nick at one point came up with some designs that kind of were the blueprint for this larger graphic design of plants on the top of the building that broke away from the organic, and anyway, it was just a fun thing. So, and I felt, I was always worried because I'm not a teacher. I don't, I'm not that structured of a person to show up and be handle a class. But we really had a lot of fun, and I loved the students, and I think we all learned a little something. I certainly took away more than I imparted, I think. Trey built this kind of serpentine piece at the end, and we laid the cairn out, and let's see what else we got here. So there we are laying. Has everybody been out to see the piece? If you haven't, go check it out. Have you seen it? Yeah? Good. So I'm going to jump into a few things here. This is, and we can get back to questions about the project here, but I want to just lead you through a little bit of the work I've done. This was a piece, a woodblock print by a Costa Rican artist, which led to a drawing that I did of young woman, little girl in the wind, which was a portrait of Carol Cadu. And now I'm in Brazil trying to pursue a big project with the favelas down there. I want to create a permanent piece on 1 acre that would be basically loosely based on this design. And I went down 2 years ago and took money. It's amazing how how well you're received when you bring 5,000 bucks. And created a piece in a favela just to get to know the people that are working down there and try to make common cause with the government and with the workers there. We began to create this work, and so I've been at it for 5 years, and I'm trying to get back this winter to actually start the piece. James Lloyd to the left with the camera is my partner down there, and he's a video guy. And come in. And so anyway, this is my journey, this is my adventure. I think art is kind of a platform for discovering the world, and my art is a platform to travel the world. This piece was in Kansas City, so I created this in the bottoms of Kansas City on a half acre as a proof of concept design to show the investors or people that might get involved in trying to do something in Brazil. I've had a good email return from Liliana Ayalde, who is the ambassador to Brazil. So I'm making really good headway, but I'm 4 years into it and $100,000 in debt from it. So we're gonna have to see what happens next. Jay, can you lend me any money?
Sure.
Jay's on.
Sell a cup, maybe.
So real quick, I'm jumping back again. This is my father who passed away 9 months ago. I went to Wichita State University, wanted to be an avant-garde abstract expressionist and grew my hair long and had a puka shell necklace, and I was a hip dude, I want to tell you. Well, you saw the picture. And, but when I went back at 20 and spent a summer with my father and my mother, and Mom fattened me up on fried chicken and cherry pies, I worked with my dad and just kind of reconnected with the land. And so I began to paint again. I went to Wichita State University on an art scholarship, and I knew I was an artist. That's all I ever wanted to be, except for a rock and roll star. But I really got back into my art and started doing big murals. I went to Dodge City and shook Dodge City up for a few years and began to create images. I was always aware of the fact that people had created designs on the landscape. This is a Nazca desert. I mean, not Nazca, it's Chilean desert, a 400-foot figure. Christo was maybe the biggest influence from the standpoint that Christo's work was about not this running fence that was 22 miles long. It was about the 2 years it took him to convince landowners and people to allow him to cross their property. I mean, there's jags in the fence where people said, no, you can't come across here, you flaky artist. So it was art interfacing with society in a very interesting way. I was fascinated by that and realized at that point that I had been doing the same thing for 2 years or 3 or 4, trying to talk somebody into giving me a piece of ground to do my first design. So I thought, I'm already making art, you just can't see it yet. Oppenheim did a little piece. I found out about this later, but certainly I'm not the first person to create designs on the ground. The first piece that I did, I was 20, well, early 20s, and really tuned into the American Indian movement. I had some friends I had met at Wichita, and so doing this big portrait of Satanta, who was a Kiowa Indian chief, a war chief, who was famous for his oratory at the Medicine Lodge Peace Treaty, and he was just a bad dude. I mean, he was arrested, put in prison for 2 years. They let him out, and he went marauding again, and ended up killing himself by leaping off a second-story building in Oklahoma or Texas. But he was just kind of heroic to me. I was kind of a revolutionary guy, and I thought Satanta was pretty cool. And I met Kiowa people after that at Haskell, and really got involved after that with a lot of people at the Indian Nations University. Sunflower Field was my homage to Van Gogh back in the day. Certainly not trying to make it look like Van Gogh, but my Kansas portrait, that's me on the tractor and actually planted. My dad was surprised that I could actually run a drill. He would let us plow, but he wouldn't let us plant anything. So we planted all of those sunflowers, and they were beautiful up close. I was then invited to Haskell Indian Nations University by Dan Wildcat to create a piece leading up to the 500th anniversary of Columbus's first visit, which was not well received by a lot of Native American people, that celebration. So we decided to do the medicine wheel piece in not forgetting the last 500 years, but working towards the next 500 years in a collaborative way. And being non-Native American and getting invited onto the campus of Haskell was pretty heavy stuff. And we had the elders of the Kickapoo and the Iowa and the Sac and Fox kind of okay the project for us and give us their blessing. At Haskell, I met at the dance a Native American named Saginaw Grant. I asked his permission, and we created this portrait on 27 acres north of Lawrence. This is a piece off the end of the runway celebrating Iowa's sesquicentennial in the style of Grant Wood. My own design, but in the style of Grant Wood. That's a Braniff taking off. There's a close-up. That was 7 weekends driving back and forth to Iowa. This piece was on Wes Jackson's Land Institute in Salina, and was a portrait of Carol Cadu that I finally writ large, carved out of prairie, and then burned, and we didn't plow the ground, and it was kind of to parallel the philosophy of the Land Institute's appreciation for the natural landscape and all of the plants that grow on it. And actually, you can tell I didn't realize it until the fall, but see the paths, the trail across it, the lines? I mean, I could never find out. I mean, that has to be wagon tracks or something. You think? I mean, I don't know what else it would be. And I noticed when I went across it, it was bumpy, but that it had been plowed at some point, but it hadn't been plowed for 20 years, and it still had that evidence, that bas relief. This piece, Trump's property in New York, yes, that Trump, and yes, I did meet him. He was nice to me back then, you know. I deigned to travel to New York, come hell or high water, and I found a lot of high water, believe me, and a lot of hell. But I spent 9 months up there and recreated my homage to the land, or my journey back to the pristine landscape on the overbuilt grounds of New York City, created out of multiple plants and things, worked with homeless people, and Ryan and Lone Wolf, the 2 guys standing beside me, were memorialized in a movie called Earthworks about this effort. That's a pretty good movie. They make me look a little bit more of a hick than I really am. And I am a little bit of a hick, but I'm not that much of a hick, you know. But Earthworks is a pretty good movie, and it won awards. It never made any money, and it never won any. And it was not at big festivals, but it was a fun project. But 23 years ago, I still had a bald head, didn't I? But these guys were incredible, and Ryan and Lone Wolf. I won't go into that story because we don't have the time. But there it is on Manhattan Island, back when the towers were still standing. On the Hudson River, 72nd Street. I returned while I was doing that to create murals in Sedalia. There's my portrait of Amelia Earhart up in Atchison, near the cemetery where her family's buried. A piece with Eugene Friesen, who wrote a wonderful symphony called Grasslands that we played for 5 years in a row. Down off the end, you can see the cars and everything. Every year we return to the feet of Prairie Man, which was a petroglyph that William Leasteat Moon sketched off of a wall that he discovered in Kansas. And it's a petroglyph that I could never find. There are a lot of petroglyphs that he had in the book that I could find. If you look up Kansas petroglyphs, you can look at them. I never could find this one, but I love this figure. Kansas Man. It was made out of just moving stone around. And so it should stay there for a number of years. Eugene at the Land Institute with Aldo Leopold portrait in the background, playing cello at sunset with the Leopold family reading from Leopold's writings. That was a special night in Kansas. And Eugene is just an amazing musician. It was so lucky for me to. So we elongated this piece so that it would look good from the hillside. And it was dry, you know. Wes Jackson won't use any pesticides or anything, so the field was just eaten up. There wasn't much there. Project in Cuba, got an invite from a friend. We went down. We had an acceptance from the Fidel's government while he was still in power, and a letter from from Pat Roberts, who was head of Senate Intelligence at the time. So I had both a letter from the government of Cuba and from the United States government. And Pat Roberts actually got me into Cuba on the second trip because they were shutting us down. And he said, let my boys go in there. So we're supposed to go have a drink down there sometime. Rosa Blanca, this image I didn't think was a very successful art image, but I had a week to do it. So we We carved out Rosa Blanca in Cuba and kind of offered it up as a gift to the Cuban people from the United States. And of course now things are changing there, and agriculture is obviously one of the biggest trade items in relationships between the two countries, and people from both political parties are pretty accepting of, in ag states, of that, that it's a good thing. This is the Cespedes family and the Jose Marti's great grandson and his wife at the dedication, everybody but Fidel. Bill Curtis's ranch, I got to be artist in residence for a year down in southeast Kansas. Bill is maybe one of the coolest cats on the planet, and he is a Chicago, CBS guy, Topeka guy. For God's sakes, take cover. The young kids are going, what's he talking about? Anyway, the gallery in southeast Kansas that worked for a few years. One of the commissions was to create this 120-ton rock work, giant piece that was kind of a fun work to work on out in the pristine prairie. And there it is with buffalo on it. So the funny thing is that nobody even knows this is down there. I mean, if you go down and ask, you can get in there. But Bill kind of thought it should be out by the road. And I said, people are going to come and drink Budweiser and hang out. Let's leave it off someplace that people have to work a little bit to find it. So now it's disappeared. But I think at some point we'll probably go back. We've had governors from both Oklahoma and Kansas there, so it's been a pretty fun piece. My Chinese symbol for harmony, Her, which I created when we bombed the embassy in Yugoslavia. I just did this because I was bored and I wanted to do something in a wheat field in the spring, so I got my weed eater out. That's me in the red shirt. And I just carved that out with a weed eater. Standing wheat, probably in June or something, early June. And kind of end this with my plow. I'm trying to find something that Linda will want to purchase for the museum down the road. And so I'm doing plows. This is the first, but I've got two more in the works that I'll create as artworks. I call it Plowshare, and it's got hammered metal and the sycamore that I've worked up, and so it's a pretty involved piece, and I'm intend to do a dozen of those. So questions, anybody?
When you make earthwork with plants, is it maintained? I mean, I know the rocks will stay there, but how does that continue for how long?
The hardest part of it is like building a house. You can build it, and 10 years from now, you got to put a new roof on it. So all of the pieces that I've done that have had a permanent, I don't know if you guys could hear Barbara, but she was asking about the permanency of a piece. And I'm real hesitant now to do something that's quote unquote permanent unless it's really zero-scaped. The best application, I think, for the work, quite frankly, would be, remember Payment in Kind program, the PIC program back in the day, where they paid people to take really ground that probably shouldn't have ever been broken out because there was a lot of runoff and it just wasn't very valuable for crops. But to return to something like that, or a rough what do you call it, trash area? What am I thinking of? A dump. Salvage yard. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of it. But to read when they're filled up, a landfill. When you get a landfill filled up, be perfect place to put artwork on the top of it at the end. Maybe even use recycled stuff. We went to Trash Mountain down in Wichita, which is this monster hill with the best view of Wichita you've ever seen when you get up on top of it. And I said, let's just build a huge artwork up here. We'll use all the recycled materials. We'll get kids involved, and because it was capping, they couldn't put any more out there. And it didn't happen. But that's, I think, maybe the perfect application for my work down the road. Instead of just, I'd rather see a pristine mountain than one carved into the shape of things. Just my thought. The plants, so the piece in Atchison has some plants, and they try to maintain it every year, but it's rough. It's not easy to maintain an image. and keep it permanent unless you have a crew that does it every year. Yes, ma'am. The artist.
Do you need to go up in the air and see it while it's in progress to see how it's coming out, or do you just make all the calculations on the ground and know what it's doing?
Early on, it was very important for me to get up to see if it was comporting to my vision and my thought, my sketch. But sometimes now I'm on an image, and I do commercial pieces too. I don't think I showed my commercial works, but I've created images for Garth Brooks, and I have to make a living at this, and so it's pretty hard to get people to commission you to do a fine artwork out in the landscape that speaks to what I want to do. It's a lot easier to do, a Budweiser logo, which I don't want to do, but I've come to grips with the fact that I have to balance that. That's quite frankly why I'm going to Brazil, is that I'm going to try to break out of that and do a piece in front of the Olympics that's so available to everybody that it will push me away from having to do the commercial pieces. You asked a question and I completely got off of it. What was it?
You have to get up to see.
So now, for the Minneapolis project, we had a drone shooting it, and the day before the drone article comes out that Thomson Reuters is using a drone to shoot the artwork off the end of the runway, some buffoon flies a drone up close to an airplane and causes the Minneapolis Institute of the Minneapolis Department of Transportation to give us a cease and desist letter that we can't do a drone. So we're having our big party and the final reveal of the work next Friday, and they had to hire a drone company. They had a guy on campus that had a great drone and was doing wonderful shots, and now he can't go, and so they've got to hire somebody for $4,000 to go shoot a drone shot. So I just found out that I could get a helicopter up there, and I would really like to see the image when I get up there Saturday. To answer your question, right now it's very important for me to see what it's going to look like 7 days from now when it's finished. But I'm in the air traffic pattern and it's really hard to get up. So it's important at the end, if I have a client that I'm trying to please. If I'm doing artwork just for myself, it's a whole different ball game, because I'm not worried about pleasing somebody as much, Yeah. Yes.
Can you explain the process how you scale it and then determine how that's going to look when you're in the use?
Sure, yeah. GPS came out years ago, and I tried it on one project, and I'm not building a mall, so I don't have to be within 2 inches on something. I can be 5 foot, is close enough. So I just do a simple grid. I think it's probably similar to the grid that Michelangelo used to do the Sistine Chapel ceiling, which is just get your sketch, get a feel for the space that it's going into, how it might fit, what the framework is, grid it off, go into the landscape with a I used to use a transit and really set things up perfect, and now I just use a tape measure and lay them out. If it's a rolling topography where you might lose the view of it over a hill, then a GPS could help work. But it's pretty simple math. And so a 1 inch square with a coordinate on it is say a 100 foot or 20 foot, for instance, in Minneapolis, a 20 foot square, and each coordinate would have a number on a really large design. And then I simply go out and if I have an existing vegetation, grass, alfalfa, something growing, then I can etch the image out and find it, and then I need a photograph from the air. So I can look at it and go, ooh, that's, like on Van Gogh's piece, I just completely had one tree off. I don't know what was happening. And so I'm able to come back and recreate things and cover up my mistakes. And so I'd like to get up more often than I could. Probably now with the drones, unless you're in an air traffic pattern, I can just pop up. The guys just go, well, you want to see it? There it is. And it's that quick. Drones are going to completely change. I'm in the movie business too. I work with Kevin Wilmot in Lawrence, and he just got back from Chicago working with Spike Lee on a film called Chirac. And Linda, you're missing all the good stuff. I was really funny a while ago. Anyway, the film business is going to change so much with drone technology. Everything is, and like anything, there's a good and a bad side to it, a lot of invasion of privacy type things. But for the film business, it's incredible. The Thelma and Louise footage probably cost them $200,000 to shoot that day, to get a helicopter and a Tyler mount and swing around the car as they were driving along. Now they pop a drone up. One guy stands there and shoots it all with a, you know. Yes, sir.
How did you figure out the Halo vehicle image?
You know,
Because that's quite a trick.
I cheated and used a graphic design guy that's smarter than me.
Okay. That's the one that makes me stand.
Do you guys know these folks, Jay and Barbara Nelson? This stalwart folks in this community for, what, 100 years now? I can get away with that with you, but not with Barbara. She's going to kick my tail. No, they have an incredible gallery downtown, probably one of the nicest gallery in the state, I would say. Buy me a glass of wine, Jay. Others? Yes, sir?
I don't know where I came in on your chronology, but my first encounter with one of your things was at the Historical Society in Topeka, the Historical Museum, and I thought it was really a marvelous mural and
Well, thank you.
great scale, which of course applies then to successive crop art things that you've done. The scale and ambition level is pretty inspirational.
Thank you.
You began to talk about drones, which suggests movies, and as I was looking at your thing, I was wishing maybe they were done also with a movie camera, because it would be fun to see the succession stages in which the Earth then reclaims the things that you do.
At the end of it, as it fades back, that's
Yeah, but that's another assignment, life is short.
absolutely. Well, I do have a lot of, on the commercial projects, obviously, that have money behind them. I've had maybe a half dozen or more really professional videos that I could show, but it's not that I'm not proud of them, but I've fought that all my life, that I'm an artist, I'm doing artwork, and I've had to do enough commercial works that you know, sometimes I fear that I'm just going to be. And what's the thing, you know, if you forget the muse long enough, it will go away. And so I have these wonderful videos, high-end, you know, $200,000 projects where they shot all this beautiful process showing the whole thing being built. And you know, I guess I should show those sometimes, and certainly I have them if somebody's interested. But on the art projects, it's harder to get a budget to do that type of thing. That's another reason I'm kind of throwing it all into Brazil. I want to go down there. I'm 65, and I can still make things happen. I've still got my legs under me. I can still work 10-hour days. But that's probably not going to happen in another 10 years. So I got a window where I've got to go do another big thing, and then I'm going to sit in the mountains and paint paintings for Jay and Barbara. They're going to turn them into a lot of money. You better buy them now. I'm just saying. Other questions? The students are going, okay, guys, shut up.
Are you the person responsible for all these corn mazes that you have?
No, and the interesting story is the guy who, I'm bragging a little bit, patting myself on the back. The guy who invented the corn maze was named Don France. He was from New York. He worked for Disney. He came up with the idea, and he employed a guy from Britain, from London, who was who designed mazes but not cornfields. He was a professional maze designer. Called me up and said, I've been carrying your book around showing to farmers in Pennsylvania what I'm talking about. It's crop art, but I want to do mazes in corns, and we'll have people come and they'll pay money. And I was like, phew, I'm an artist, you know, I'm not gonna do another roadside attraction. I mean, that's hokey, you know. And so 8 years later, after there was one that year in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, 3 the next year. He and the guy got into a fight the 3rd year and split up, and then there were 400 in the state, and then there were 5,000 around the world, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of these things around there now. And I actually got involved when my son was about this tall with the Pendletons in Lawrence because I thought Evan needs to be in the country. So I went to Pendleton's and they asked me, would you help? They said, would you help us design a maze? And I thought they meant, would you design a maze? So I did one. They wanted to do it themselves. But I kind of hogged my way in, and we did 4 or 5 mazes, and Evan got to learn how to run a 3-wheeler and plant and be in the country, you know. And so it was a really good thing in that sense. And I decided to get over myself being too good to do mazes. But I like to think that I had some influence. Also, the designs in Japan, the rice drawings. 2 years before the first drawing, there were for 2 of the 3 years before the first rice drawings, the Japanese television shows did stories on my work that were played all of Japan. I can't prove that, you know, and that's ego. I understand that, but if it's true, you know, representational images on the ground had not been around until I started doing that. My predecessors, who are incredible, Christo and Heiser and Walter D. Maria, and all of those guys, way predated me, and but you know, I'm obviously I have a little sensitivity about it, or I wouldn't bring it up, would I? But anyway, it's been amazing to be here at the beach with Nick and Hannah and these students and Linda and Lindsay. Is Lindsay here? Did he slip out? This has just been, this has really been a special time for me. And I was a little nervous about it because I just thought, boy, I've got to show up on time. And I wonder if they drink wine, and they did. That was really great. And the fun thing is we've only just begun. We've got another year or so, don't we, Linda? And it was really gratifying too that that the museum board and staff and everybody decided to have this be a longer project. And so we're going to see how it grows and see what evolves out of it. And maybe we plant these, I just told Jay and Barbara, maybe we figure out a place on campus or off campus for some of these designs that are out there when we move them off. Yes, ma'am.
Well, with our meadow out the back, is there a possibility of a cairn being out there at any point?
I don't know why not. You know, I think if we got students involved again and made it a multidisciplinary thing with landscape architecture and sculpture and art students, and you can use ag students. I mean, we could cover the gambit and do something fun here. I don't want to push that because I don't need more work right now, but hopefully you guys will be calling me in São Paulo. And, you know, it'd be fun to do something over here. I love the campus, and I'm, you know, like I said, I'm a big K-State fan. So, Linda, thank you. Anything else, guys?